that is the lap times right here, of course. As you can see, Verstappen in a league of his own, half a second faster than Sainz. Oh, same lap times there for Sainz and Russell. Mercedes on the second row in Q2. This is only Q2, mind you. Most of the usual suspects, Albon, Stroll, Bottas, Sargeant and Zhou went down Q1. But in Q2, it's the two racing bulls of Ricciardo and Tsunoda. Alonso, Aston Martin are seriously struggling now. Gasly is out, Magnussen's out, although of course Magnussen's got P12, and I think it's safe to say Haas have got a fairly quick qualifying car. And well, look at that, Q3, Ocon, Hulkenberg have got into Q3 along with the four top teams of Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren. I think that is pretty much to be expected, and I think for most of the teams behind it, but they're only fighting for 9th and 10th. So who will take pole? Max? Norris? Going to be a Carlos Sainz weekend? And Perez once again right at the back end of the top 8. It's not really happening for Perez anymore. I mean, Perez, I think he's mentally checked out of Formula 1. He's there for his veteran package. He has accepted number 2 status. I know people have noticed that Williams and Aston Martin have fallen off, but honestly, in context of the 2023 performances, I think that's because a lot of other teams around there, but like McLaren, like Haas, like Alpine, were all struggling at the time, and now you can see as the likes of Haas, McLaren and Alpine have all improved, Aston Martin and Williams have fallen back to their natural place on the grid. I mean, Aston Martin, I think, are still in a fairly comfortable P5, since I don't see any of the rest of the guys beyond the top 4 catching up with them. As for Williams, well, I think their ceiling is just fairly low in that. At best, they are a team that can only really aspire to finish 7th if the car is working well. You might be right about Piastri being a number 1 driver. Well, I'm just saying, obviously, Norris has got an illness this weekend. But I'm just saying, since Piastri is only 18 months into his F1 career, he has not reached the peak of his ceiling yet. So give it another 18 months or so, and I'm pretty sure come like 2026, we could be seeing Piastri become McLaren's number 1 driver, because Piastri is 18 months younger than Norris, and he's, of course, has 4 less years of experience in the sport. So I mean, Norris, honestly, having started at the age of 19, is, frankly, I can't really see Norris getting any better than this, because he's now in the 6th year of his career. And he will be 25 years old towards the end of this season. So once he gets to that age, I can't really see that much more coming out of Norris. That's not me criticising Norris or his abilities, but that's just me illustrating the realities of what Norris can achieve. I mean, Aston Martin. I know Aston Martin, you could criticise why they keep Stroll Jr. at the team. and so on. But I think Aston Martin did capitalise. A lot of teams struggling at the start of last season. You also have to realise, of course, even when Aston Martin were basically had the second fastest corner grid, there was like a 4/10. I mean, you could tell that car was at least 4/10 of a second slower than what Red Bull have. So, like, it's not like this season where I think McLaren have been there or thereabouts with Red Bull in terms of having the fastest car. I mean, the fact of the matter is the rest of the grid has closed up onto Red Bull, whilst Aston Martin, I think, have reached the ceiling of their potential. And I think it's going to take a couple of years for the new factory resources, the new dynometers, the new development tools to really help them get to the next stage of development. They were never truly close in contention, to be honest, to be beating Red Bull for race wins. With the exception of maybe Monaco, where, of course, I think Aston Martin had a car that was more suited to the track. And, of course, if Alonso had a strategy been better, I think, I don't know. I mean, you got to realise Alonso was lapping faster than Verstappen in between the certain parts of the race because, of course, it was raining. And Alonso and his team just simply made a wrong decision when it came to the pit stops and the tyres. So, and I have to say that was arguably could well be the last opportunity Alonso had at a race win that evaporated. I mean, yeah, I suppose, was it last year's MCL 60 was not a perfect car by any stretch of the imagination, but I just don't understand how McLaren have a habit of starting season so poorly, which obviously it handicaps what they can achieve for the rest of the season. But I think the problem they have now is obviously their drivers with Norris. I don't think he has the greatest racecraft ever. I think losing out the start of the Spanish Grand Prix was very costly, and of course, dropping from first to third place. And the fact that I think in the next 2 years, Piastri is going to start closing up on Norris, and then Norris is going to probably start getting annoyed. And as a result, McLaren will have something of a teammate battle, which I know McLaren are known for having an equal driver policy, which of course could well see them lose out to Max Verstappen, who of course, well, as a very much, well, he's clearly the number one, and Perez is the number two. And I don't think it'll ever change because why the hell would, Red Bull, you can sit there and moan about equity, morality, respect for the sport and all that stuff, but really, it helps to foster a good working environment at the Red Bull team because they don't have to deal with two drivers squabbling with one another like we saw at Mercedes between Hamilton and Rosberg. Mercedes only got away with Hamilton and Rosberg's rivalry, just like McLaren just about got away with Prost and Senna at each other's throats because they had the best corner grid by some distance. I mean, I think the only way McLaren can really win a championship against Red Bull is if they did have the outright best corner grid by some margin. I can see Oscar beating Lando. That might ignite a fire where Lando would want to jump to another team. Yeah, but the problem is that other team could well be Red Bull. So, I mean, where else could he go? I mean, Hamilton's got a contract at Ferrari till 26, and Leclerc's going to be there until 28. I think Mercedes are rumoured to be bringing in Kimi Antonelli, so I don't really see many places Lando could go apart from maybe Aston Martin. But that is also dependent on whether Alonso carries on for any longer, which I think, ultimately, yeah, I think that could be Lando's last resort because if Lando becomes available, I think Aston Martin would probably jump at a chance of getting Norris as their new replacement for Alonso. Look at that. Piastri fastest. 1 minute 5:04. But of course, we have to remember Verstappen did go fastest with a lap time, half a second faster in Q2. So it's not Verstappen as he. Oh, look at that! He's gone with fastest again. My goodness me, he's putting out those lap times all right. And Perez, nearly 6 tenths of a second, so in sector 2. Oh my goodness. There's a huge disparity in pace between the two Red Bull drivers. Perez goes 6th fastest. Oh my word, 1.1 seconds slower. Max Verstappen is 26 years old, but my goodness me, it just seems like he's breaking the mold in terms of what's expected of an F1 driver. In that, I swear he's improved even more now this year compared to where he was last year, shockingly enough. I think the only reason why he dominated as much as last year is because obviously he did clearly have the best corner grid, but now, even without the undisputed best corner grid, he's somehow still producing these sort of performances. An 044, that is ridiculous. That is insane. I don't even know where he finds this sort of lap time from. I mean, the biggest Achilles heel Max has had throughout his career has been his qualifying pace. But now it looks like he's sorting that out, because I think he's only conceded pole position twice this season. In what is now, I think, this is now the 10th race of the season, and I think he's on course to take 88 pole positions this year. My God, we are now approaching what can be described as peak Max Verstappen, and I can tell you, you can put Norris and Piastri and Leclerc the second Red Bull, and it'd still be losing to Max. This is a real problem now. And it doesn't help the fact that we live in an era of Formula 1 where the cars are basically bulletproof, so there are no other variables that can really stop Max Verstappen like we saw back in the 90s with like Nigel Mansell breaking the record with 9 wins in 1992. But if he had a bulletproof car, I mean, Nigel Mansell could have won that championship by like the British Grand Prix or the Hungarian Grand Prix or whatever. I mean, if the Williams FW15C of 1993 was bulletproof, I think Alain Prost could have won that championship by a bigger margin. And obviously Mika Hakkinen in 1998, where I think McLaren's reliability meant that Ferrari were able to get back in the championship fight with Schumacher. And likewise, again, the following year in 1999, where Eddie Irvine was doing the honours for Ferrari, but of course, both cars ultimately lost out in the last race. Jos Verstappen, yeah, but Jos Verstappen will always be there as long wherever his son goes. And of course, you cannot underestimate the impact of course, Herbert Marko, who seems to be very much. He's not so much running the Red Bull Junior Academy. He's more or less just obsessed with how well Max Verstappen can do, really, because I don't know how much money he gets paid from Jos Verstappen, but it just seems as if he has a very, very close personal interest in the career of Max Verstappen. So there's actually 2 people that are like really, really have pushed Red Bull into becoming the Oracle Max and Jos Verstappen racing team. And it's not the first time we've seen this sort of nepotism, Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. Vettel, when he was at Red Bull, was also a huge favourite of Herbert Marko. And of course, Michael Schumacher at Ferrari. I know people will come out and defend Schumacher, saying he played a huge role in building up Ferrari and Mercedes. I suppose the only thing that made F1 watchable during Schumacher's days was the fact that there was only 16 or 17 races a season, and the fact that what's his name? The fact that the cars were not quite as reliable back then, and the fact that Ferrari were only having to deal with Williams and McLaren. Because let's face it, the amount of political influence Mercedes and Red Bull have is honestly so much more substantial than what McLaren and Williams have ever had. So, as a result, of course, instead of Ferrari just fighting the FIA and all the other teams combined, they're now having to fight Red Bull and Mercedes, who themselves are two massive entitled teams. Geely wanted to buy Alpine, and he owns Lotus. Oh, that's interesting. Did they used to have their name Geely slapped on Lotus's car? I think it was, wasn't it? Geely. Oh my god, Lotus is gonna come back to F1. Well, so weird to think, isn't it? I think Lotus and Renault used to be rivals back in the early 80s when, of course, Renault had their original factory team in the sport. Before, of course, they took a break, then spent most of their time building engines for Williams, and then bought out Benetton and returned as a full factory outfit in 2002. Thing is, you have to realise Kimi Raikkonen's 2 wins for Lotus F1 does not count as being the same race wins for Team Lotus, who went out of business in 1994 and was shut down. So what's it? The original Lotus team, according to the F1 record books, are registered as Team Lotus. So yeah, 1994 was the definite original Colin Chapman Lotus team. The Lotus team that came back in 2012 to 2015 have got nothing to do with Colin Chapman or his family. It's just a corporate company owned by Geely. So yeah. Well, I think that's it. Verstappen will start the race first. Piastri ahead of Norris. My God, almost half a second faster. Perez is nearly 1.2 seconds slower than Verstappen. Sainz over half a second slower. Russell 6 tenths slower. Leclerc, well, Sainz is beating Leclerc again. Hamilton down in 7th, almost 8 tenths off. I mean, at this point, moving to Ferrari looks like a sideways move. And Perez has improved his lap time, but it goes no further up the grid. But now, of course, he's just 9 tenths slower instead. I think he's actually just got in front of Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg 9th. Ocon is just not really bothered, has he? Not that he really needs to bother, but... Oh, Norris has got in front of Piastri. And Russell has beaten Sainz for 4th. Piastri's had his lap deleted, and he's relegated down to P7, just like Gasly had his final lap deleted in Q2 and ended up being knocked out down in 13th. Yeah, so, God, I will say Piastri does have a bit of a problem, and I think Piastri does have a bad habit of having the lap times deleted for violating track limits. Well, that has screwed McLaren over because that means that they can't really double team Verstappen tomorrow. They can't really do. I mean, tomorrow I think they're gonna have to try and do a split strategy with. I think Piastri's gonna have to try and do a longer stint or a shorter stint and just do the alternative of what Norris and Verstappen does because, yeah, that's not exactly ideal to have Piastri drop down to 7th. Russell up to 3rd, Sainz up to 4th, Hamilton 5th, Leclerc 6th, Perez just, my God, Perez is just a seat warmer now. Perez's money is just going to keep him there. He's just there for his pension fund now, which, and I mean, if Perez talks about trying to win championships, I'm just going to laugh at him from now on because it's so clear he's just there because, I mean, the team, for some reason, doesn't believe Ricciardo could do a better job. Look at that. Sauber right at the bottom. I think Sauber hit their peak in 2022 because they do seem to do their classic job of starting the new regulations very well, like they did 2.5 years ago, finishing high up in the constructors table, and then they tumble. They did it in 2001, they did it in 2008, they did it again in 2015. They repeated the same pattern in 2019. And now it's happening all over again with these current regulations, which are now 2.5 years old. And Sauber are back to the bottom again, from 6th to last. Williams have hit their ceiling. Like, I don't expect much from them. Aston Martin, I've already talked about them, and they're boring to talk about because we all know. I mean... Brilliant from Nico Hulkenberg. Yeah, but Hulkenberg is an exquisite qualifier, my friend. We all know what Hulkenberg can do over one lap. He's one rapid driver. I think it's safe to say Piastri is still a developing driver who's trying to find the limits of how far he can go in terms of pushing the car every lap. Unfortunate by Piastri, but hey, that's life, isn't it? I say Nico Hulkenberg this year has been better by Alonso, but by much. I don't know what to say. Alonso's had a very up and down season so far. Good in the first 5 or 6 races, but since then he has dropped off somewhat. I don't know whether Alonso has just sort of checked out for the time being because he knows Aston are not competitive and can't score points, but I mean, because Stroll's been looking good recently, but having said that, I think Alonso's just there for his pension package. Did Andreas Seidel do anything? Because I see nothing improved at Sauber yet. Dude, I think the team's resources are limited and capped until, Audi arrive. I think they're spending all of their money to improve the team for Audi's arrival in 26. Because honestly, I don't think Sauber really want to invest in the team at the moment. There's no point. It's not about 24 or 25. It's about 26. I don't know whether Alonso necessarily deserves better, but because, I mean, to talk about deserving better, like, well, what metric? Like, you can sit there and talk about how good a driver has been, but, I mean, there's been plenty of excellent drivers who have achieved less than Alonso, so can't really feel sorry for him on a necessarily, to be honest. And no matter what happens in the next few years, I don't think Alonso's reputation as one of the greatest drivers of this generation is going to disappear anyway. So, not to sound mean-spirited, but I mean, he's getting paid very well for his services, so can you really feel sorry on that metric? Absolutely not. I mean, £5 million a year, you know, I would love to be getting paid £5 million a year to be finishing 14th and 15th in most races. And I think I might be off to talk to Chatter HD if he's still streaming. He could have won more chat. He could have. It's not it's not off. It's half, my friend. Sorry, the Grabanozzi has appeared. But yeah, you have to realise Alonso's mistake was to return to McLaren. Well, you could argue Alonso made the mistake of leaving McLaren now, don't you think? It makes you wonder what Alonso could be achieving if he was at his old team. Oh no, I think that's of course, that is the results of the sprint race, I believe. Of course, Piastri finished second ahead of his teammate Norris. And I think, obviously, the two Williams beat Sauber for to avoid the wooden spoon. And Magnussen and Stroll narrowly missed out on points. So I think they actually had a great sprint race, but the problem is their cars are just not fast enough to catch up with the top four teams, who I think have clearly edged out in front of all the other teams at the back now. So I think whilst a lot of the teams have now got within themselves about just 1.5 seconds of Max Verstappen's Red Bull, I mean, there's still clearly a gap between the front and the back, albeit a much smaller one than compared to the end of 2022. Shit. Never mind. Anyway. So, I hope you enjoyed the qualifying session. In 45 minutes' time, I will be doing a live stream for the opening game for Switzerland versus Italy in the opening game for the last 16 of the European Championships. Please join me there. Bottas is doing well. The team needs a rebuild. Yeah, I know. So thank you very much. Please join me there. If you're not subscribed to Encore Football, I will provide a link in my community tab. And I'll see you next time, tomorrow.